Welcome to my presentation. I've got mainly PowerPoint slides, but also some videos here. I've included some photos of students and they're happy for those to be shared with you and to raise awareness of the work that we do with them. Some of the videos are a bit noisy, so this is your warning. It will hopefully keep you awake, especially the violin, which I will get to a bit later. So a little bit about me. I was trained as an occupational therapist down at Southampton University longer ago than I would like to admit, I think. And then I joined Treloar's about 15 years ago now. So in September, I'll have completed my 15 years. And then while I was an occupational therapist at Treloar's, I did my master's in Assistive Technology, which was over at Coventry University. And sadly, they don't run it anymore, but I definitely enjoyed the 3 years I spent doing that. And then shortly after I finished that, I kind of sidestepped. I'd gotten involved in various projects when I was an occupational therapist anyway, doing some strategy and getting much more technical. So I dabbled in a bit of SharePoint design and a little bit of SQL Server queries and reporting and things. So I was already fairly technical, but then I took the sidestep and took over the Assistive Technology team. So I've been doing that for 8 years now. And it's a really lovely team. It's a really lovely job. I love a technical challenge. And obviously with technology constantly evolving and the students that we get always wanting to do new and different things, it's just really never boring. And it's quite nice because I think that's quite a privilege. You can't necessarily say that about every job. So I wanted to show you a little video just to give you an idea of the young people we work with, because I think sometimes you can say disabled and actually it means an awful lot of different things. And it's, you know, we do work with some of the most physically disabled young people in the country. So hopefully this video will give you an idea of that. Lovely. So I've done the fun introduction to Treloar's, but I've got some facts and figures for you as well. So we're a charity dedicated to delivering outstanding learning, therapy, care and independence training. And the charity does that by running a highly specialist school and college. So we have around 180 students every year, and they range from age 4 to age 25. And they also have a real different range of kind of learning abilities as well. So we have some students who are still learning kind of cause and effect and quite simple learning. And then we also have some students who study GCSEs and who also attend the mainstream sixth form college in our area to do their A-levels. So it's very varied. I think that's part of the reason why it's never boring. To give you an idea of kind of the the types of students, you will have seen in the video, all of our students use a wheelchair. That varies. Some are in manual chairs, some are in power chairs, but all of them are wheelchair users for most of the time. Around 60% of our students are non-verbal or who have non-standard speech, which is quite difficult to understand. So they might use communication aids. You'd have seen on the video quite a few young people were sat in front of like a little computer screen that was on their wheelchair, and that's there to support their communication. Around 40% of our students have a visual impairment. So normally they have some vision, but it might not be as clear or as easy to see things. 38% of our students have a life-limiting condition. And 63% have cerebral palsy. So that's obviously the majority of what we see. And then 10% have muscular dystrophy. But otherwise, there's all sorts of kind of rare conditions that our students may have, and we will work with anyone. So all of our students have EHCPs, which is an educational care and health plan, which means that most of our students are funded by the local authority to be with us, but we also have a massive kind of fundraising endeavour every year, because the local authority sort of pay for the basics, if you like. And to be fair, the basics for us is an awful lot of staff and input and people there to support students. But there's lots of other things that we try and add on to make sure the students get the best experience. And for that, we fundraise for. So I just thought, like, all of our students as part of their EHCP have something called an aim of placement. So that's kind of where they want to go when they finish with us, because we're very much not focused just on the years they're with us. It's all about setting them up to be, successful in their future, whatever that may be. So for many of our students, that's finding a supported living place, maybe some voluntary work, that kind of thing. But also a fair subset go on to higher education, so on to universities, and some go into employment. I think, as this group I know is aware, is employment is very difficult to access for our young people. So some of our students do have it as an aim of placement, but for those who do, even finding voluntary work after finishing with us can be a challenge. And that's not really through lack of our help and support. We run a lot of work experience placements. We have a whole team that tries to get out and link with organisations, but understanding of disability and willingness to adapt roles can be a real challenge. So we do a lot to support and try and break down the barriers, but I think especially as the students come from all over the country to be with us, they're not just local to us in Hampshire. It is definitely a challenge. But last year, 30% of our students were able to access an external work experience placement. So that was usually like a little 4-hour day and was fully supported by a member of Treloar staff. But that's just a little picture of what we try and do to kind of get our students prepared for their future. So honing in on my team, you will see we're very small, but I like to think a very important cog in the machine. So there's about 850 staff members at Treloar's, of which the Assistive Technology is 6. But we probably do see all the students more than once a year. So we're quite busy. There are 6 team members. So there's myself, I'm the team manager, and then I've got 3 assistive technologists, 1 educational technologist and 1 administrator. So the students certainly keep us busy. There's a whole range of things we will do with students to kind of help them access their education and independence. Probably one of the more common ones is equipment repairs. We love our students to be kind of outgoing and adventurous, but that does then mean that things sometimes get broken. So you will see lots of bent foot plates on wheelchairs, this and that. We will do our best to kind of fix them there and then, at least do a temporary repair. And worst case scenario, if we can't fix them on site, then we can at least tell the person who maintains the chair, which is usually an NHS wheelchair service, we can at least tell them what's wrong and what spare parts they could bring. because the reality is for some of our young people, it can take 2 weeks, sometimes longer, for wheelchair services to kind of come out to assess the problem. They'll then come out and they'll go, oh, you need this part, I don't have this part. And then it takes another 2 to 4 weeks for them to get that sorted. And the whole time then, if their equipment's significantly broken, they're in bed, or not able to access all the fun and learning that they should be. So that's a really core part of our purpose. We also do lots of bespoke design, and I think that's vital for our young people, because they're so, like, of the bell curve of disability, they are so at the far end. Often it's a case of, like, there's adaptive equipment that's available mainstream, but it still doesn't quite work, or we might kind of merge two bits of kit to work together. So we have a fully fitted machine shop on site. So we've got bandsaw, milling machine, lathe, laser cutter, 3D printer, the works really. So we can do whatever we need, as long as it's reasonably practical, to make that. I would say of my assistive technologists, most of them have come from kind of an engineering or mechanical background, and then they've learned about the students while they've been with us. So they are really useful chaps, very practical, and great at coming up with ideas that people come to with them. We also do lots of access assessments, which I'll go into in quite a bit more detail. So that's really just making sure that students can access the technology they need for learning or for fun, because lots of them like doing computer gaming as well. We're fully trained and have the stuff to do wheelchair programming. So lots of our students aren't able to just drive a standard power chair with a joystick that you might see people going shopping in. It's more, maybe they need head switches, or we're even working with students driving with eye pointing at their AAC. So that's quite exciting. That's fairly new. So having us on site able to kind of tweak and mend those settings can often mean, like, the difference between a student being able to do something independently or needing a lot of support because the chair's too fast or responding too quickly, for example. And then I've already referred to the communication aids, or AACs we call them, that support young people's communication. So electronic ones are often mounted onto the wheelchair, so that means they're always in the same position and the students can always get to them however they might be using it. So you can understand why we're quite a busy little team, but it's a really fun one as well. So moving on to how we support students with their access to technology. There's two ways we mainly do it. One's fairly formal, and then the other is much more ad hoc. So for each of our students, we give them a formal check twice a year, and that means kind of going into their classroom, talking with their teacher and their occupational therapist. If they have additional communication needs, which is at least half of them, we also include the speech and language therapist. And that's really, as I tell the students, it's to make sure the teacher's getting enough work out of them. Because so many of our students, they can kind of take information in, they can kind of think about things, compare things, do all that learning, but actually being able to express that learning is where the real challenge can be. And so that's where we come in, working very closely with the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, and the physiotherapist when needed. To make sure that they can demonstrate everything that's kind of inside them and that they know and that they want to express. We then do have ad hoc input, so students can refer themselves or say, please, can you help me with this? Or other people can as well. And so we'll work with the wider team there. So like this year particularly, we've worked with some music therapists. We've worked with the subject specialist teachers like D&T, get everything kind of going. There's nothing, we've done some lovely 3D printing for boccia, which is a disability sport. We've had quite a few Paralympians come through our doors and then go on to represent our country, which is always amazing. And that you either throw or roll a ball down a ramp, and it's a bit like ball, but similar. But because so many of our students have a visual impairment, we've created like 3D balls, if you like, that magnet onto a whiteboard so that then they can feel where all the balls are and can kind of decide where to aim. So we rarely say no to anything unless it already exists on the market, and I'll come on to that in a little bit. So that's all normally related to leisure or independence, but usually throughout the year we definitely get a good few interesting challenges, some of which I will be showing you. In terms of the different ways our students might access technology, we again try to put as few barriers in as possible. So this young lady here is got a special keyboard, so that's very high vis. It's slightly bigger keys, so it's easier to press. And she's also got a rollerball mouse, so that you could, like, she can move her mouse that way because she doesn't have the physical control to move around a normal mouse. And I think, like, for some people, that's where their sort of understanding and expectation of assistive technology sits. Sometimes I go to meetings with other assistive technologists and I'm like, oh gosh, this is like, we do, this is very few of our students can just be set up with equipment like this. And I would say that has really changed. When I started 15 years ago, most of the kind of that classroom check was, oh, what sort of keyboard do you need? Do you need an extra big keyboard? Do you need an extra small keyboard? What sort of mouse do you need? Now it's way more complicated than that, and we definitely have some students who can use that, but often the work goes beyond that. All of our computers can be touchscreen, and also, as well as PC access, all of our students can use an iPad as well. We'll set them up with those as well, and that's very much dependent on the young person, what they want to do, what their teacher is teaching them. So touchscreens are quite common, but again, a lot of our young people struggle with the coordination and the fine tuning to point accurately. A lot of our young people access things through switches. And I've got a little picture there. I think, like, your normal expectation of a switch is a little round switch, and we use a lot of those. We have a whole remit, ones that have light touch, ones that are more resistant to touch, difficult. But for our young people, often, like, even a hand is quite difficult. So you'll see there on the picture, somebody's using what we call a wobble switch. So it's on a little spring and it kind of pings around. And with their foot, or often with their head, sometimes with an elbow, we'll look at the students with their therapist they're working with and work out, like, what's the most reliable movement that they've got, and then we'll go with that for there. Then we've also got eye gaze. So that was quite a new technology 15 years ago, but not so much anymore. It was originally developed for people who were shopping, which I always find fascinating, because they wanted to know where people looked initially on the shopping shelves, and therefore where they should put the most expensive, like, cans of soup. But because of that then got harnessed by the disability market, which I just think is fantastic. So it uses reflections. It shines light at your eyes, and then on the basis of the reflections from your pupils, it works out where you're looking at the screen. And then if you look there and dwell for long enough, it will then kind of trigger a mouse click or a cell on a screen. And that's kind of absolutely transformational for so many of our young people. But it is exhausting. Like, I'll use it for half an hour and I am shattered, because you do have to focus so hard, and when you're not choosing, you can't look at anything for too long. So I mean, some of our students are fantastic. They are so quick. They're like absolutely dumbfounding, but you need quite a lot of stamina to use it. But it is opening even more opportunities. So we now have a trial product that our young people can use that was fundraised for, called an ability drive. And that means actually they can drive a wheelchair using their eye pointing as well. And that's fantastic for the young people it works with. So they have that communication aid in front of them, and that uses the camera on there to show them where they're going so they don't crash. And then there are kind of buttons on the screen for forward, left, right, and backwards, and they can steer and move around there. So that's always changing. And then the other things we have are kind of just amazing things, really. So some of our young people use head pointing, which sometimes that's a reflective dot, so it works similar to eye gaze, but more newer products now have gyroscopes. So you might have a pair of glasses with a little gyroscope fitted, and then based on the position of the gyroscope, you can move a mouse. And you can either hit a switch or just stay focused in the same spot, and that will trigger a mouse click, or whatever you're trying to do. The other thing that's really changed in the last, say, 5 years or so is wheelchair joysticks. Before, we always used to have to provide a separate joystick for somebody to access a computer, but more and more of them now come with Bluetooth enabled. So they can just drive up to a computer and Bluetooth, use an on-screen keyboard. And that's it's just so much easier, because it's not like, you don't have to get up really close to the desk. You're already comfortable. That's been a great one. And also we use AAC links, which I think would be quite potentially interesting for use in business as well, because it's a really easy way of accessing a networked computer if you're a communication aid user. So it talks through Bluetooth, and it just sends keyboard and mouse signals through, but that means you can open Windows, so you could open Microsoft Word and then you can type, or you can send an email that way. You've got to, it does take a bit longer, but it absolutely does work. So this young lady here, I kind of love, because she's using both of the last two things. So she has a Bluetooth connection from her wheelchair joystick there to her communication aid. So she uses that to move the mouse around the screen. She uses that blue switch to choose what she wants when she's moved the mouse there. And then that is sending the text from this device over to this computer monitor here. And she's logged on to Word, it looks like, but she can also use emails, PowerPoint, whatever. And then she's got a choice. She can either do some basic mouse movements using the program on her device, or she can toggle the settings of her wheelchair joystick, and it can also control the mouse on the PC if she wants to do a little bit of editing. So that didn't really exist when I started, but it's lovely to see now. I think the tension we see there is NHS services really they just want to focus on what they're funded to focus on, and budgets are tight, so that's really understandable. But it then is quite difficult if you can see that actually with a Bluetooth joystick, it would open so many opportunities, and the wheelchair service is they can drive with a normal non-Bluetooth joystick that's £200 cheaper. So we do have those sorts of conversations quite a lot as well. We use an awful lot of supportive software, which I'm sure you would expect us to. So we do quite a lot of speech to text, and that can be anything. So wherever possible, we try and steer students towards kind of free and built-in things. So actually, Microsoft and iOS now have pretty good speech to text. So we will often try that with young people first, to kind of get them used to the idea, because it can be quite an unnatural thing, kind of speaking your thoughts aloud. I think it's probably becoming more natural, but for some people, especially if they're in a classroom with a load of other teenagers, they don't necessarily want to give that a go. But we always encourage them to do that if it's possible, because sometimes fatigue management can be such an issue. And actually, even if you can type, if you maybe type for half an hour and then speak for half an hour, you can manage your energy levels that much better. So we try and give them lots of tools in a toolkit. We will use things like Dragon, which again is quite expensive, so it's more difficult for them to then use when they've left, which is always on our mind. And more recently, there's been some AI supported voice to text, which is really interesting because that's doing wonders actually for people with non-standard speech. So there's a program we're using quite a bit called Voice It, where you can train the AI to kind of understand your voice and then translate your voice. And then it has like 300 training words that you have to say. And from that, it gathers all of the sounds you might say in speech, and then it will understand you. It's not perfect, but it is pretty good. And certainly for some students who otherwise wouldn't really be able to get their work written down unless a human was taking notes for them, it's meaning they can do some work independently, which is great and always what I like to see. We also do quite a bit of kind of text to speech just to support general literacy and reading, and again that kind of energy management if reading is more difficult. Lots of word prediction, so we'll use, like, again, the stuff that's built into Windows quite a lot, but also we have some more specialist stuff if they need that. On-screen keyboards, they're great if you can use a mouse or do some eye pointing to an on-screen keyboard. And then we also have quite a lot of stuff that's switch accessible. So I'll show you the little video. This one doesn't need the sound. So this is I want a program that is switch accessible. And you can see how long it might take somebody to compose a message. So this is called automatic scanning. So it's going through your options for you. And you have to wait until it hits your thing. If you miss what you want, you have to wait for it to go round again. And then this one's quite clever because it actually, the options change as they go because it's dynamic vocabulary. Some of them aren't that smart. But just to say something quite simple, actually, if you're switch scanning, you have to be real patient for that, as it scans through all the options until you get what you want. But it is their independent thoughts and their kind of, way of I want a drink, influencing the world. But I think there are more people that can understand, because sometimes you introduce people and you can have some pre-programmed phrases. And I think Stephen Hawkins was amazing for breaking down barriers, but he almost always used pre-stored phrases. So he would kind of do his talk and save them, and then he only needed a few clicks to, like, say a whole paragraph. And I think that sometimes works against our young people because people are like, why is it taking them so long to say something? Whereas the students, like really focused and kind of waiting for the thing to do that. So I think that definitely can be a barrier in terms of something like work experience, but that's something we work quite hard to help people understand if our young people go off to work experience or something similar. Things like, it's worth saying, like iPad has done quite a good thing in terms of making switch access a little bit more normal. Its native switch access is really quite complicated. I think it's great if maybe we're used to controlling an iPad and then had a degenerative condition, but if you've never had independent control, it's got lots and lots of options and it moves quite quickly, it's just a bit much. But we use something called switch recipes, which are great, particularly for our young people who are learning, if I press this switch, something happens. because you can record recipes that are like little macros, really. So you can, with your finger, record a recipe, and it will kind of press the screen, and then every time you press the switch, it will replicate that touch of a screen. So we do things like kind of a swipe to move a page over, so you can read a book that way just with one switch, or that you can press and pause a YouTube video, whatever you want to do. And that's been really transformational for some of our young people, especially those, as I say, like in our kind of sensory and interactive cohort, because they don't normally have much control over anything because they need so much physical support to do stuff. But actually being able to entertain themselves for 10 minutes by kind of playing and pausing videos, or kind of listening to an audiobook is amazing and makes a massive impact for them. So this is where my engineers have gone wild with the bespoke design. So I just wanted to show you some of these as a bit of an option. We do an awful lot of different joystick knobs, particularly with our 3D printer. We used to, in the good old days, back when I started, we used to drill holes in golf balls. And then that was an easier grip for a lot of young people. They're too heavy now. Wheelchair joysticks are really, really sensitive. So being able to use like a honeycomb inside of 3D printing makes things a lot easier. And so really we can look at a young person's movement, and I've got one member of my team, Dean. He is absolutely phenomenal on the 3D printer, and he will kind of look at how the student can move, how things are more difficult, and then he can make something really bespoke to fit them. So this young lady here, you can see she drives with her wrist, which is very unusual, but she's had this for about 4 years now, and it still works really, really well for her. So she doesn't have the finger control to grasp a joystick. She used to, but she's got a changing condition. But so she knows how to drive, but she lacked the grip. But with this, she can just kind of rock her wrist forward, left and right, and even back to reverse. And she's got amazing control of her wheelchair that way. This is another one. So this one I find quite fascinating. So this young lady just uses a single kind of finger. So her finger normally hooks under this little sort of semicircle section. And then she can use that to go forwards, left and right. And then there's a little divot in the front there, and she can move that finger round to the front of the joystick and drag it back for reverse when she needs to. So nobody else would ever want to use that sort of joystick, I don't think. But it's something that was assessed with her therapist that really works for her. So she's been doing a good job. And you can also tell we do let them have a little bit of choice if possible. So she's got a very nice purple and silver colour changing joystick because you can do that. So why not have a bit of style and choice? With our laser cutter, we also do things like key guards, which make a big difference. If you've got quite kind of jerky movement, it can really like you can do a lot of mishits. So you're aiming for a certain part of the screen. In this case, it's a communication grid. So you're aiming for one word and you hit the word next to it, and then immediately somebody misunderstands you, and trying to get them to realize that you didn't mean that what you said can be really, really frustrating. And unfortunately for a lot of our young people, if they get frustrated, then their tone can change and it makes it even harder to express themselves. So a key guard's just a simple perspex overlay that goes over the screen, and then it has small holes in it for each of the cells, but it just means it's easier to kind of slide your hand over and then poke the exact one that you want, and it's easier because you have to aim for a specific hole, so mishits are reduced. We also do lots of switch mounts. Again, like they do sell them, but it's often that our students are so kind of unusual, we can't quite get them in a position that we need them. So this one's great. It's using a Manfrotto mount, which is a camera arm. They're really rugged. They're very hard for staff to break, so we like them. And then this is a flexible 3D printed bracket. So actually, if he moves too far over, it will just kind of bend out of the way. But there's enough rigidity there that he can turn his head and press the switch and get the response that he needs. And then really we'll make anything else. We've adapted a cereal dispenser this year. This is a glue stick holder, so it's easier to hold and spread your glue. And we've done similar for kind of pens and paintbrushes and things as well. And we just love a challenge. So this is actually a violin holder, which was a whole new one to us, but one of our music therapists came to us and was like, I've got a student who would really love to learn to play the violin. And so this is a 3D printed violin holder. And it was made by Dean again, because he's just such a whiz on that. So this was, it goes onto like a sports arm brace for your shoulder. And then the violin slots into there. And we also bought, this is just off Amazon, which is like a kind of guide to help keep the bow on the strings and to stop it sliding up and down. And then he also 3D printed like this little black cap for it, which stopped the bow kind of pinging up and out of it. And Margaret's asked me not to play the sound, and I think I agree with her. Maybe you can hear. But you can see the difference that made, and it's such an unusual kind of bespoke thing to do. It'll only really probably work for him, but it was really rewarding to kind of see that play through. And then he absolutely loves it, like the sensation of having the violin and all those vibrations really close to his face. It's great. So that's going to be featured, I think, on Radio 2 in autumn. So if you're a listener, you'll have to listen out for that. I realise I've done a lot of talking. I'll whiz through this next bit a little. I just wanted to talk through like some of the kind of tensions we always hold, because it can be really challenging, and it's definitely like not a one size fits all. So for us, constantly we are thinking about how to prepare the student for life after Treloar's. So every student's aiming for somewhere, and therefore we need to make sure that their equipment needs are suitable for where they're aiming to go. So that might be that they want to go to university and then or onto the workplace, and they'll need to access kind of networked PCs, in which case you might steer them down a certain path. It might be that they're going to kind of supported living, where they're likely to be with people who aren't necessarily very technically confident. So you need something that's going to be really easy and simple for them to set up. I've said easy or difficult to adjust. That's always a real tension. If you give people lots of knobs and levers, they love to fiddle with them. For some people, that's great, because they maybe end up in a slightly different position every day. They get uncomfy, they need a bit of a tweak. But I'd say for a lot of our students, having something that's actually quite difficult to adjust, so they have consistency in their technology setup, is usually better. And then we have our biggest tension of kind of off the shelf versus bespoke. We always try and give our young people like the very best when we're here, but then there's always that tension of actually our resource is really hard to access when they've left. So sometimes it's better to have maybe not quite the perfect setup, but something that definitely can be maintained after they leave, so that it lasts for longer, kind of can be replaced. It's one of those things, like for young people who use communication software particularly, you've always got that sort of choice of, do you go for an iPad and an app, and that's then easy to replace, it's fairly cost effective, But if you buy the more expensive proper communication device, you then also get access to ongoing support from the company who provide that. So they'll help update software, they'll help train staff in any new placements or anywhere where they go to live. So I think off the shelf versus bespoke is always something we're kind of mindful of. If an off the shelf solution will work that's kind of within a reasonable budget, then we do normally recommend people go with that, because I think it sets them up better for the future. But sometimes only bespoke will do, and we do enjoy doing those solutions as well. I think exams access is always a bit of a tension for us as well. So not all of our young people do take exams, but most of them will, of some form. And the requirements kind of nationally is that students will use their normal way of working to do exams to make sure it's fair. Now that makes loads of sense. But actually for our young people, a normal way of working can vary an awful lot, and access arrangements can get very, very complicated. And there's always this real tension between kind of making sure students can express their knowledge as much and as quickly as possible so that they can get through the exam, albeit maybe with extra time. And that's kind of always against kind of how independent they can be, because for quite a lot of young people, it's, being able to speak or express on a communication aid and then have someone write down for you is often quicker, but sometimes it ends up being less their work, or it's not as independent. And perhaps if you're thinking about their future, having, it's unusual to employ somebody and then employ a scribe for them, even if it's appropriate for an exam. So we try, and that's always in our minds as well. I don't think we always have the answers. I think it's a very individual thing. But yeah, we've got the tension as well that not all software is accepted by exam boards. So we do have to be mindful of that when we're setting them up and making recommendations. Cyber Essentials has been the gift nobody wanted, I think, at least from our perspective. For us, our funding is conditional on being compliant because it's local authority, so it's government money. I think it makes sense as legislation. We absolutely want to be safe and keep our network, secure, but it is really difficult because I think sometimes for us it's a bit of a hammer to crack a walnut in terms of what young people can and can't use and what they can and can't access. I think in mainstream it's a lot easier to identify what's in and out of scope, because if young people are bringing their own devices, then they're out of scope and you don't really have to worry about them. For us, because they live with us, and they need so much support sometimes to access the technology, they're more often using ours. So it's a bit difficult. And it's been a real barrier for my team in terms of what we'd like young people to use. There's some little bits of software that are absolutely great, but they might not have been updated for 15 years and now we can't use them. But then there's nothing on the market that replaces it. And that's been really frustrating. And also there's some great stuff one of the communication aid services has developed a blink switch, which uses the computer camera. And then when you blink, it triggers a switch press. But because they're really small as well, they haven't paid to license it and it's not there. So then we're told we can't use it. And we've also got issues with GDPR and barriers to connecting devices, sharing and remote editing. And it's often 2 steps forward, 1 step back with things like that. And I'm always very supportive of our computer services team and their efforts to keep everything safe and secure, because obviously that's important, but sometimes that can be very frustrating in terms of the barriers it presents our young people. And then we've got e-safety, because the internet is a wild and exciting world, and we always want to aim and enable learning, but actually our young people are disproportionately at risk of things like online bullying and extremism, which is always really horrible to think about, but actually, because they can be more isolated, they're in a minority group, that does make them more vulnerable for that. So we've got a real kind of tension in terms of how to support them to learn through experience, that kind of the desire to keep them safe and secure. But actually, if you hide away from this stuff, it's not going to help you, because they will go out into the big wide world and then they can do what they want. So we work to kind of support them as much as possible and kind of help them to learn and understand how, learn what to do to respond to those things that they may not want to see or hear, rather than kind of hiding them away from it, really. And I just thought I'd pop in here about AI as well. AI, I think, offers some really amazing opportunities for our young people, especially if you think how long it might take to say something if you're switch scanning, and then you can give AI a prompt and it can flesh it out into a whole letter. But obviously that does come at a cost, and that comes at a cost of putting your information out somewhere, and then what they do. But then that's also tension by the fact that we know we're feeding AI a very narrow viewpoint, and actually if we had more disabled users using it, then that viewpoint hopefully over time would expand. So that's something we are mindful of and support our young people with. Lovely. So just a little slide really on how you could get involved, just to raise awareness of some of the other things we do. So we do quite a few supported internships every year, which have been really successful. And as part of that, they set up their own business, which is called Let Me In. I've got a link to it on the next page. And basically, for a small fee, they will come out and they will kind of assess somebody's premises for accessibility. So the picture here, they're actually on the watercress line. And they're kind of making sure that all the doors can be opened easily if you're a wheelchair user, looking at the signs, how clear things are, how easy it is to navigate around. And then they'll write a kind of summary report and give you some tips, and also a rating. So that's really good. And it came up from them. That's what they decided. Actually, it'd be really useful for us to, improve accessibility, but we could be part of that. And then work experience and supported internship. So we really do a lot, but it is tough, I think, in terms of placement. So if there's anyone watching this that thinks, actually, I'd love to learn more and potentially support a placement, then we would love to hear from you. We offer an awful lot of support. So I think everyone thinks work experience and they think of quite a scared sort of year 10, year 11, sort of dumped somewhere for a week. That's not how we do work experience. It wouldn't be fair on you, and it wouldn't be fair on the student. So we offer continuous support by fully trained Treloar staff in the workplace. We can do pre-visit support, pre-visits to discuss the placement in detail and ensure that it's going to benefit the company, the students visiting, and the student. There can be real flexibility with the work hours and days our young people do, and kind of based around your availability. So like even an observational visit can be really, really beneficial for them to kind of see. And we can do things like taster sessions. So you can come and the young person can come and meet you, and you can meet them, and then you can work out a potential way forward. So we do currently work with 17 different external organisations or businesses for work experience, but we would really, really love to grow that number. And then the last thing is fundraising. That's quite an obvious one, I suppose. I've already covered, we have so much. For my team particularly, we're really reliant on fundraising to keep all of our assessment equipment up to date. And that just means that we can try things with students before we then ask the local authority to buy them, because it's really awkward if you ask them to spend like, oh, we need this bit for £2,000, and then you realise it doesn't work. Could we have something different, please? They don't look favourably on that. And actually, a lot of our young people, it's really frustrating. We live in an environment in the NHS, they're so, budget poor, that actually a lot of our young people need to prove that they can drive a power chair before they'll be given a power chair. But if you don't have a power chair, how on earth are you meant to learn to drive one? So we do have those resources, but they are predominantly fundraised for and maintained that way. So yeah, we always appreciate any support. We have quite a lot of businesses who will come and do working days and practical things as well. So I've given you a few contact details there, but otherwise, any questions?